Well, hello everybody. I know it's been a while since my last kit review or update on a project. I'm bringing something to you new tonight. Well, new to America. Those of you who are in England have probably seen these on the shelves already. This is the Airfix Folland T.1 Gnat. The Gnat was a jet trainer developed for the RAF by Folland Aircraft. A designer by the name of Teddy Peters, who designed the English Electric Canberra and the Lightning, two really good aircraft in the RAF stable, was a little concerned back in the 50s that jet aircraft were becoming more complex and bigger. So he came up with this idea of an ultra lightweight attack jet, which was only as big as it had to be, and the result was the Gnat. The Gnat in its original fighter role was not purchased by the RAF, but the RAF did purchase several Gnats in a two-seater training role so that pilots who learned to fly on slower jets, such as the jet Provost, would not be at a loss when they were learning to fly higher performance aircraft such as the Lightning. And this is the result. Gnat is probably most famous for its use as the mount of the Red Arrows aerobatic team from the mid-1960s until they switched over to using the familiar Hawk trainers sometime in the late 1970s. But anyway, Gnats have been in model kit form for a few years, but Airfix decided to use their expertise to tool up a brand new kit with recessed panel lines, really good details, and it looks like it's proving to be a very popular seller. I decided to get one. I've built something pretty cool from it, which I will show you in a moment. But let's take a look at the parts. Okay. Here's the contents that you get in the Airfix Gnat kit. Well, scale of this kit, by the way, is 1/72 scale. One of the most common scales found worldwide. You get one plastic bag of parts. There's two main gray parts trees. One clear bag for the one smaller bag for the clear sprue. Set of instructions, like so. Comes with a pretty nice set of drawings for alignment of the decals, or decals as the English like to call them. The back of the box also contains color reference for the paint job. Now, one of the little idiosyncrasies of Airfix kits is that they have the paint callouts in Humbrol color numbers, but thankfully for these boxes now they're actually putting the names underneath the Humbrol color numbers, but that's on the box only. The instructions just list the numbers themselves. It doesn't tell what actual color it is, so it takes a little bit of research to figure out those colors. One place you can go to research that is IPMSstockholm.org. They've got a set of color conversion charts where one thing, they tell you what several of the Humbrol color numbers are, and secondly they even give you some equivalents in other paint brands. And with those two pieces of information, it's a lot easier to find some equivalents. Anyway, let's take a look at the parts. Detail looks really good in my opinion. I don't know how well you can see it, but this model has some pretty nice petite recessed panel lines. Maybe not as fine as some people would like, but with a layer of primer or two, it's pretty easy to cover those up. Get two pilots on the sprue. The wing is three-piece. So you got the main top wing and then these two bottom plates that go in there and there. Here's the second set of parts, the gray parts. Two fuselage halves. One thing I really like is the tail is one piece, and they molded the spines so that the glue seam is on the side of the spine, so when you put the other half of the fuselage there, you don't really have much of a seam to fill, and it makes it a lot easier. So therefore, the only seam you really have to worry about is on the bottom of the aircraft and on the nose just in front of the cockpit. Two seats, stabilizers, various other internal cockpit bits, decal sheet, very nicely done. Only one marking scheme for a Gnat from the 1960s, painted in high-speed silver and orange. I don't know if it was a day-glow orange. I don't know if they had day-glow yet, but high-speed silver as opposed to natural metal. Some people might say, oh, that's natural metal if it's silver. Nope. It was a painted form of silver, mainly because in the English environment, if somebody left something in natural metal, unless they kept it in a hanger all the time, it would get oxidized pretty quick and look pretty dull and pretty ugly. But very nice set of stencils, very well printed. I really like what I see. However, I have built one of these. I opted not to use the stock paint job or decals, and I did not do it as a Red Arrows jet either. Give me a moment and I'll show you what I did to my Gnat. Well, what you see in front of you is a completed Airfix Gnat. Obviously not done in the paint scheme that you saw in the box. In case you're wondering what it is, well, I'll give you a hint. Parody film circa 1991-1992 starring Charlie Sheen. Yes, that movie was Hot Shots. And this is a Gnat painted up to look like, and as they called it in the film, the Oscar EW 5894. No, I am not saying the name of it on camera because this is a G-rated channel, as it were. But watch the movie, you'll figure out what the name is and probably groan and laugh with the rest of us. But as you can see, on the side of the nose it says The Navy instead of Navy. Navy on the wing there. Stars and bars. Danger stripes on the intakes. But this has been something I've wanted to do for a few years. I had one of the older Airfix Gnat kits, but I never could find it when I wanted to build this thing. When the new kit came out, I thought to myself, well, this kit ought to be perfect for it, so let's use it, let's build it, and have a little fun. Anyway, in terms of how well the Airfix Gnat kit builds very well. This is the, as I was telling you there, the seam is kind of hidden on the rear fuselage, really nice, really nicely covered up by the spine, and the top wing blended into the fuselage very, very well. About the only area I had a little bit of a fit problem was with the intakes, putting them on the side of the fuselage, because you got this splinter plate right here. But I found if you take a file to the front of that splinter plate to file it down, then the intake just drops right into the slot for it just fine, and glued together about as well as anything I've built from any other company. Like, you know, maybe not quite Tamiya quality, but definitely on par with Hasegawa and some of the new tool Revell monogram stuff. Now in the film Hot Shots, one thing that was really nice is after the Gnats were retired from service in the RAF, several of them came up for sale on the open market. So unlike most modern or even older US fighter jets or trainer jets, where the DoD has got this little restriction that you can't buy anything that was built after, I believe, 1958, 1959. The RAF doesn't really have that restriction, at least not on jets, on trainer aircraft that had no weaponry. So they put these for sale up on the open market, and usually you can find several Gnats on the jet warbird circuit. For the film Hot Shots, the producers had access to two civilian Gnat T.1 trainers. They also had access to a Gnat F1 fighter, which Finland and India utilized. I noticed they didn't use the fighter for any air-to-air scenes, and then they built several mock-up Gnats for the flight line with a few of the silly little prop gags that they had, such as the radio antenna, the rear view mirror, stuff like that. There were like 3 jets used in the film for flying sequences. That third jet was I believe, a 2-seat trainer built by the Vought Corporation in an attempt to win a contract for a new U.S. military trainer. It didn't sell, but that plane was used a lot. If you notice in the flying scenes, typically it's the jet that's the furthest away from the camera, while as the 2 Gnats are closer to the camera. The decals on this model are made with, most of them are made with an ALPS printer, such as the Navy titles, the stars and bars, which are a little different from standard military star and bars, and I also made some little decals for for these rocket pods, I guess you could call them. What it is in the film, they painted up the 2 auxiliary fuel tanks that most Gnats tend to have, and painted them up to look like weapons pods. So I just replicated that design, printed out on a decal sheet, and well, you apply them to the model. They look really, really nice. I've had a few compliments from the people that have seen it. Other than that, it's stock out of the box. The only other thing I did was tape seat belts, or just use some little cut down pieces of masking tape to make the seat belts. I did not put the pilot figures in the cockpit, mainly because I'm saving the pilots for another project. The tape I used is a Japanese brand called Aizu, and the tape itself is essentially the same stuff as what a lot of people call kabuki tape. The stuff made by Tamiya. It's a rice paper based masking tape, yellow in color. This is identical to Tamiya, but it's cut in much finer widths. This is one of the smallest widths they make, 0.7 millimeter. What I actually use for the tape seat belts in this jet, I believe, were 1.5 or 2.0 millimeter tape strips. Next time I do one, I'm probably going to make the seat belts a little skinnier. But there's that. Flip over the Gnat so you can see the bottom. In case some of you are wondering what the heck is a gnat is a little tiny buzzing insect. If you ever live in Texas and like high humidity areas, or like Florida, they just buzz around your face. They're really, really tiny, and they're more annoying than anything. Perfect name for this type of jet. Landing gear, very well designed. The sausage tanks glue on very, very well. Was able to blend the seams on the bottom really nice. Yes, that is a stock styrene pitot tube, so I got to be very careful not to break it, but at least it flexes. At least the plastic flexes really nice. The color I used for my jet was Testors Model Master light ghost gray. It was kind of a guess as to what gray shade they used, but I went with light ghost gray because they were using some scenes from the movie Flight of the Intruder for some of the carrier scenes, and I know those airplanes, U.S. Navy ones, were painted in light ghost gray, so I said, okay, well, painted in that color, it'll be as close as anything else. But that's what a Gnat looks like when you build it. and you don't quite build it with the standard color scheme. In case you're wondering how big a gnat is compared to something of US equivalency, well, behind the gnat is an F5E Tiger 2 model kit, which I'm building, Hobby Boss kit. It's the same scale as the Gnat, 172 scale. Reason why I'm using this as an illustration is the F5 had a trainer version known as the T-38. Both were built in parallel with one another. So the T-38, which the Air Force still uses, well, nose are about the same distance, but you can see that the Gnat is about only 2/3 the size of an F5 or a T-38. That is a small airplane. They didn't have a lot of very tall pilots in the RAF back then, and even civilian pilots have to be kind of short or otherwise feel very cramped in that cockpit. Okay, so there you have it. One 172 scale Airfix Gnat, built in the markings of the jet from Hot Shots. I have to admit, I was very tempted to do one in the standard paint scheme, so my next Gnat will probably be done in those colors. The Gnat has worn several colorful schemes over the years. RAF had several, and then of course the Red Arrows and the Yellowjacks. But in my opinion, this is probably one of the very best kits that Airfix has ever done. It's a subject that's uniquely English, which I like, and it fits together very, very well. Ever since Hornby bought Airfix a few years ago, they've really been pumping in a lot of funding into the brand to just improve the quality of the kits that have come out. Best part is, though, is for a quality of a kit like this, if somebody were like Tamiya or Hasegawa were to do one, it'd probably cost about, well, $20 or higher. How much did this little guy cost? Well, she only costed $9 US. I know in British pounds you're probably going to be paying about 9 British pounds because of VAT and all that stuff. I don't like that if you're British. I mean, considering that we pay less in the US for these guys than you do, and it's your model company. But in my opinion, the value you get for the money that you pay is just incredible with these kits. I really like the quality. The model fit together well. All the problems I encountered with it were pretty much self-inflicted. But I would not hesitate to build another one of these. As far as the skill level that you need to build one of these, well, maybe I wouldn't recommend it to a raw beginner for their very first model kit, but somebody with 2 or 3 kits under their belt could easily do it. And doing it in the stock paint scheme or doing something different like I did, you can end up with a very nice looking little model. Anyway, that's all I've got. If you have any questions, you can always comment on my on the comment section. And I'll be coming back at you very soon with some other projects, including that Gemini I've been working on. And one other space project. Until then, thank you for watching.